My first slide today shows the lovely and smiling face of my colleague Stacy. A few years back, Stacy and I were at work discussing a project. I had made some assumptions about how I thought this project should go. Well, it turned out my assumptions were way wrong. I was frustrated, things hadn't gone my way, and I let Stacy know how I felt. Well, instead of sympathy, this next slide shows the look on Stacy's face that let me know she was not going to cut me any slack. And she said to me this, "Laura, when you assume, you make an ass of you and me." Well, since that time, I've never forgotten Stacy's message to me that day. It was a very wise and a sassy message. And I've always since then, tried to avoid making assumptions, especially about people. I found that when I assume, without truly digging deeper to try to understand the situation, that I'm often wrong and that I might miss out on something or somebody that's pretty cool. So in my job, I study and advise on employment issues, and especially the hiring process. And I found that employers sometimes make assumptions about people during the job application process, and those assumptions are sometimes wrong. Today, I'm going to talk about a group of people that we all make assumptions about, and for which we all are sometimes wrong. Now, this is a large and diverse group of people. In fact, any one of us could have been in this group in the past, might be in this group right now, or could be in this group in the future. This group makes up about 20% of the U.S. population. I could be part of this group right now, and you might never know it. And this group of human beings is remarkably adaptable. Many are very skilled problem solvers and come up with innovative ideas all the time. Why? Well, they adapt to a social or a physical environment that was not necessarily set up for them every single day. And aren't these the skills that employers really value? Adaptability, problem solving, and innovation? In fact, these are the skills that most employers in our country, in fact, our country prides itself on having those traits. Well, despite this next slide shows by bar graph that people in this group have twice the unemployment level. They are less than half as likely to be engaged in the workforce. Now, can anyone guess whom I'm talking about?
Women.
Good guesses. Well, this next slide shows that, by the same bar graph, that I'm talking about individuals with disabilities. And by this I mean people that have a mental or physical impairment that affects one or more daily life activities in a substantial way. Now, as I mentioned, this is a large group. There are about 56 million people in the United States with disabilities, and a great many million are those of working age. And despite equal employment opportunity law, people with disabilities have a much harder time finding employment. And it's not because most don't want to work. It's primarily because we, as employers, and people that know employers, don't notice the skills that people with disabilities bring to the workforce. We make assumptions about what we think people cannot do, rather than use our problem-solving skills and our listening skills to learn about what people can do. Now, what are the things that we assume? Well, we assume that people with disabilities represent a liability. We are afraid that there will be safety concerns. We are afraid productivity might suffer. We think that our colleagues or our customers will feel uncomfortable interacting with people with disabilities. We assume that it's going to cost more than it's worth. Well, I'm here to tell you these assumptions could not be farther from the truth. And the research and numerous case studies back this up. Let me tell you a story about Amy. Amy is a young adult with cerebral palsy that graduated with her bachelor's degree in 2014. Amy was having a really difficult time finding employment, and she felt that employers were seeing her for her disability rather than for her skills and her talents. And so she reached out and she asked for help, and she was placed in a position, in a job, where she was doing repetitive manual labor tasks alongside other people with disabilities. Well, due to her cerebral palsy, which affected her speed and her stamina, and also due to a federal law which allows people with disabilities to make less than minimum wage, Amy found herself working about 30 hours a week, making about $40 a week. Now, obviously, this job severely underutilized her education and her skills and kept her below the poverty line. But the good thing is that Amy is a very tenacious person, and she kept looking for employment, and eventually she found an employer that could see her for beyond her disability and recognize her for her skills. And now she works locally here in Greenville as a business professional with a local transportation company. She works full-time, she makes a competitive wage, and she is valued for her job. Now, just like Amy, people with disabilities have college degrees. They have technical degrees. They have vocational training, just like people without disabilities. People with disabilities have career aspirations and desire for meaningful work, just like people without disabilities. And people with disabilities have bills to pay, just like people without disabilities. So, my message today to you is this: don't be guided by false assumptions or by fear. Let's use our business sense and look at the facts. Researchers have been studying this segment of the population for decades, and they found that people with disabilities rate better on dependability, better on job retention, and better on safety. With the right training, people with disabilities can achieve the same or better productivity levels. Clients, customers, coworkers rate companies that employ people with disabilities higher. And this is not just in one industry, but it's across many industries. And the truth is, it's not that hard to go beyond equal employment opportunity requirements, open up our hiring processes, and intentionally include people with disabilities. If we just use our sense of discovery, our sense of problem solving, and especially our listening skills, we can find ways to overcome the vast majority of situational barriers. And you know, today there's this thing called technology, and it helps us to do things in different ways. And so for me, let's say I want to call my client in California. Well, I can't project my voice all the way to California, so I'm going to use a technology, my cell phone, to make the call. So someone who may be nonverbal might use the same technology plus some text-to-speech software and do the exact same thing. And not all accommodations require technology. Some people might use a job coach that will help them learn the tasks they need for the job, but once they've got it, man, they've really got it, and the job coach just fades away. So one more story for you about Bill, who works at a local warehouse company. Bill's up for a promotion, and that promotion was to a forklift driving job. He's well qualified for the job. So his supervisor, though, was concerned because Bill is deaf, and part of the job requires you to sound the horn on the forklift and know that it's working, as a safety precaution. And he thought, well, if Bill can't hear the horn, how is he going to do this important part of the job? But rather than pass him over for that promotion, he decided to ask Bill. And Bill said to him, oh, that's easy. All I do is I put my hand in front of the horn, I sound it, and I can feel the vibrations. Problem solved. So sometimes we make things a little more complicated than they need to be. My last slide is going to show you 4 key words which represent 4 key things that every company can do to open up their hiring process and include people with disabilities. The first is access. Make your website accessible and make your job application and hiring process accessible. If you think that no one with disabilities ever applies for jobs with your company, this could be the reason why. So there's lots of resources out there on the web and experts that can help you make your communication systems accessible. Number 2, accommodate. Put information about accommodations on your website and share it throughout your interview process and your orientation process. The truth is most accommodations cost nothing, but those that do cost generally cost about $500 or less. 3, train. Train your interview staff on interview protocol. And train the rest of your staff on disability sensitivity so that they can get the facts and so that you can eliminate presumptions of risk that just are not real. And 4th, ask. Ask an expert. There are many organizations locally and throughout the nation that solely work with people with disabilities to help them prepare for employment. Reach out to one of these agencies and get the help that you need. So overall, it is time for us to stop making assumptions about what we think people with disabilities cannot do, and instead find ways, or better yet, let them show us the ways that they use to get the job done. Thank you.